A lot of times my clients who are in manipulative relationships come to me, we discuss that they're going to have this confrontation or this communication with their partner. They're going to communicate certain things that they feel, and they come back and they report that it was us who went in there to talk about how we're feeling, and suddenly it was about their feelings. So you rob them of that opportunity and you make it about yourself. You hijack that moment.
Pour the Heart Out. Episode 4, Manipulation.
Hello, everyone. Hi. Welcome to the fourth episode of Pour the Heart Out. We're so glad that you've been following this series so far. And in another episode today, we're talking about manipulation. Now, this is something that a lot of us go through, and we barely see in any conversations around why that happens, what really happens. So, here we have with us once again Praneet Kaur, who's an amazing counseling psychologist and a relationship expert. Hi, Praneet. Super glad to once again have you on the show. And to begin with, I want to understand from you again what all behavior qualifies under manipulation? What would you say?
Right. So, first of all, manipulation is any behavior that is practiced to influence or manage another person to suit yourself. So, it's really all about control if you look at it. So, any behavior that is even remotely close to someone trying to control the other person falls under the category of manipulation. Now, there are some, behaviors that are very outrightly labeled as manipulative behaviors. For example, attacking someone or threatening someone or blackmailing them. However, there are some very subtle ways that people also manipulate their partners in romantic relationships, and that just really goes unnoticed. So I think let's talk about those behaviors. So, for example, being extremely passive aggressive, like you're not going to, say things directly, anything that you want your partner to do or anything that you don't like, but you're going to try to control their behavior by throwing passive aggression at them. What is passive aggressive aggression? It's when you're not showing your aggression outrightly, when you're not showing active aggression, but deep down you're feeling it a lot. But how is it coming out? It's coming out as, nagging your partner, taunting them a lot, or um, making them feel really small, or making them feel that there's something wrong with them constantly. Um, and this is so subtle that if they turn back and they ask you, why are you telling me all this, you can really go around and say, but I didn't say anything you know so your partner is always going to have that sense that my partner is angry with me. But the moment they'll confront you, you'll be like, I'm not angry. Did I shout at you? Did I say something to you? Am I not talking to you? But it's really the tone in which you're talking. It's the sarcasm that's there in every sentence that you use you know and it just keeps coming up. So, I mean, something as small as, couples talk about both of them are getting dressed and they're going out, and the partner doesn't like what their partner is wearing, and they want them to change into something else. But the dynamic of the relationship is such that you can't tell your partner, because then that would be questioned, that how can you control me? How can you stop me from wearing something that I want to wear? So the partner is going to go around and be very passive aggressive and say things like, oh, don't you think you're a little too big for that dress? Or, don't you think that, I mean, it'll look a little better on someone who's a bit more thin looking, or what happened? You're not feeling comfortable. Of course, you're wearing that dress. Ha ha ha. So like joking about it, being sarcastic about it, and just coming around and continuing to pass comments on something that you want to control, some area of their life that you want to control, but you're not just going to say it directly. So that is manipulation, where you're intimidating your partner, or creating a very tense situation by nagging them, as a way to control what that they're doing, and or what you want them to do. Then there are some other behaviors which are justified, I mean, all the time. A lot of times, couples walk into therapy and one partner is going to complain how the other partner is always withholding information. They're not telling that They're talking to perhaps someone else outside of the relationship, or something happened that they know is a sensitive point in the relationship. So this partner who's withholding the information is going to say that, but I'm not lying. I just did not tell you, as if that's somehow better than lying. But that is another way of manipulating your partner, that you're very calculative about what is it that you're going to tell them and which part of this entire conversation you're going to cut out. Because you know that this is where um, they're going to react in a way that you don't want them to react. So you're reacting, you're controlling how your partner perceives you by withholding the truths. That's manipulation, because you're again trying to influence. Because when you share something, your partner has all the right to think the way they want to think, react to it the way they want to react. But because you want to control that, you're going to decide what you're going to tell and what not. What is it that you're going to, keep to yourself. And usually when this comes out, people are very defensive in saying that, yeah, but I mean, I did not lie about it. I just thought it wasn't important enough to be established, to be told. So, like, these are very manipulative statements that we throw around in our relationship, but it all comes under manipulation. Um, then there is obviously lying, very outrightly manipulative. You're going to do something, your partner is going to confront you, and you're going to just straight away lie about it. And a lot of my clients actually tell me that, if I feel too stuck in a situation, I just stop accepting. I just become so staunch upon, I didn't do it, it's not my fault. And a lot of my clients have actually told me that this is the classic way of defending yourself, of saving your ass, that you just lie through your teeth. So that is really a very classic thing that people do. So that's one thing. Then there is obviously the most intense form of manipulation. It's called gaslighting. So gaslighting is when your partner makes you doubt your own sanity, your own truth, your own emotions, and they make you feel that there's something that is wrong with you. So this is what does it look like in a relationship when your partner is gaslighting you? You're going to be telling them that you did something and I didn't like it, and this is how it affected me, and say that they're talking to another person and you're telling your partner that I'm feeling too insecure about this. Could you please, can we have a conversation about it? And your partner going around and making you feel that it's all in your head and telling you that you're the one who's insecure. You're someone who thinks too much. You're someone who takes everything too seriously. So if, or you're coming from a place where you had a very shallow life, so now you're looking at everything from that light. So stop being so shallow, stop overthinking, stop taking life so seriously. So coming around and putting it on the partner and making them feel that they are the ones who are wrong, their intention is wrong. So, for example, your partner coming up and telling you that, you said that the other day and I didn't like it. And how can you say that to me? And you straight right deny it, that I never said that, you know, and making this person doubt their own memory, doubt their own understanding and their perspective. And when this happens for a long time in a relationship, when manipulation becomes chronic in a relationship, the person at the receiving end of it starts to lose complete faith in themselves. So once you're gaslighted by your partner repeatedly, you come to a point where you start doubting yourself big time. You start losing faith in what you feel, how you think, and you think that there's everything wrong about you. Now, when you're at such a vulnerable position, when you're not doubting yourself and you think of yourself as such a small person, it's so easy to control you. It's so easy to influence you and to make you act a certain way. So this is one of the most intense forms of manipulation. There's a movie actually made on this topic. It's called Gaslight Only, a really old movie, and that's where the concept came from. So I mean, everyone should watch it. um, then there is all this behaviors, these behaviors that are really glorified in a relationship, but we rarely understand that it can fall under manipulation, which is the behavior of giving, like giving too much affection or too much gift giving. You know, when your partner is showering love and all these materialistic gifts onto you, this can be one of the ways where it's an attempt to control you. So by obliging you, by telling you that I've done so much for you, I'm not doing this out of love. I'm doing this because I want all of this to be reciprocated, or I want you to reciprocate in the ways that I want you to reciprocate. So with each big gesture, there's going to be this burden on you that you have to now give something back to me as well. And each time that I'm going to express that this is what I want, now this could be something that I want in bed, this could be something that I want from you romantically, this is something that I could want from you in any really respect in the relationship. And because I've done so much for you, if you're not giving it to me, I'm going to take 1 minute to declare that you're thankless, you're absolutely ungrateful, and you're mean and you're using me. you know it's just going to take a minute for me to come to that statement, and that triggers the victim, the one who's at the receiving end of manipulation. And they immediately start feeling that I don't want to come across as this person, I don't want to be someone who is using their partner. So you feel obligated, you feel like you have to return the favor. So when these kind of strings are attached, this is manipulation. Every time that you receive a gift or a big gesture and that burdens you, know that it is manipulation. Then there is, of course, the classic way of manipulating, playing the victim card. Right now, there are two ways in which people play it. One, showcasing themselves as someone who's actually who is your victim, who you are controlling, wherein you are the one who controlling them. Right. So in this, um, when people play this victim card, what really happens is that they are, let's say that one partner is trying to get out of the relationship, it's not working for them. So each time they get even remotely close to doing that, the person playing the victim card basically pretends to be very hurt and pretends to be in a space that this person has put them in, and it's very difficult for them to cope, and evoke guilt in the partner, out of that victimhood. Now, the partner who is on the receiving end of it feels very guilty. And to take care of their guilt, they feel like they have to give something to the partner, they have to take care of the partner, and they have to help them come out of this victimhood. So it's such a like a calculative trap that once you get stuck in it, it's absolutely difficult to break the cycle. You're going to say something, your partner's going to start breaking down, or they'll start complaining that I think I'm going to get a heart attack. I think I'm getting a stroke. I think I'm having a panic attack. I feel suicidal. I think something's going to go wrong. You know, now when you tell these things or whatever it is that your partner is sensitive about, you're going to bring that up in order to control what your partner is trying to do here, right? And your partner, as response to that, would feel obviously guilty for causing this kind of hurt and pain to the partner that they've been dating for a while now, and then they start to like reverse that behavior, fix it. And a lot of times relationships keep going on and on for a very long time because of this guilt, not because there's genuine love there. A lot of times couples do end up getting back with each other because something really traumatic has happened to this one person. Not to say that it wasn't traumatic enough, but let's just say that we can put it this way, that trauma is cached in the relationship. You talk about that trauma and you want to use that as a way to win back your partner. The second way that you use the victim card is by blaming yourself. Not not in the sense that you actually feel that you've done something wrong, but the moment you blame yourself, that's the end of the discussion. So for example, if as a partner you've hurt me a lot, and now that I'm going to express to you that you've really hurt me a lot and you're going to lose some points. So what you're going to do is that you're going to come around and you'll tell me that I've hurt you. I'm a bastard, I'm such a stupid person, and you don't even deserve me and things like that. So when I say it, you're going to change your narrative and you'll be like, no, yeah, it's fine, as long as you're guilty, as long as you regret your actions. This is such a good way of avoiding confrontation and avoiding your partner looking at you in a light where you lose points. And automatically you get to control the reaction of the other person. A lot of times my clients who are in manipulative relationships come to me, we discuss that they're going to have this confrontation or this communication with their partner. They're going to communicate certain things that they feel, and they come back and they report that, we did that, but it just felt like the tables turned. We didn't understand what happened. It was us who went in there to talk about how we're feeling, and suddenly it was about their feelings. So you rob them of that opportunity and you make it about yourself. You hijack that moment where your partner is choosing to express, and you rather start expressing, or you rather start blaming yourself. So, if you're in a relationship where you tell your partner that, you just take me so lightly, you just take me for granted, I feel like I can't even trust you. And the partner going around and say, yeah, you got it right. This is who I am. You can't trust me. No one can trust me. I am not to be trusted. I am such a mean person. I'm so selfish. I don't deserve love. I'm incapable of love. Now the moment the partner says this is it, end of the discussion, full stop. Now you can't say anything. Now suddenly you're in a position where you have to be the rescuer, where you have to save this person, right? So this is how very conveniently the manipulator very conveniently gets out of the situation. This is something that's, so there are emotional manipulation, there's psychological manipulation, then there is spiritual manipulation or spiritual abuse. What does that mean? It is when your partner makes you question your sense of self by acting godlike themselves. What does it mean to act godlike? To act really superior, like you're someone who's from another planet and doesn't deserve to live with other humans on earth. Positioning yourself in always a very high position wherein your partner automatically feels inferior in your presence. So always looking at yourself in very high regard, talking about yourself in very high regard, and always saying that, oh, the moment I do it, I'm just going to nail it, or I'm just so good at everything, and you're still catching up. It's okay, you'll get there. Look at me, I'm good at work. I'm good academically. I completely ace sports. I mean, I'm such a catch. You're so lucky to have me. So repeatedly saying things like these, and how to spot someone who is really comfortable about their achievements and with their sense of self, and someone who's spiritually abusing you, is that this person will never talk about their shortcomings. They can't handle being wrong, and they can't handle not being the one who is um, winning the argument. They always have to be right. They always have to have the upper hand in all of their relationships. This person is someone who's living with the illusion of superiority, and anything that comes even remotely close to cracking their superiority, it just leaves them really insecure. They become very defensive, very protective of themselves, and that's when they start attacking you. And when they attack you, they make you feel even more smaller. So saying things like, you know you're so immature, you do such petty things, come on, you can be better than this, or match up, I mean, look at me, I do things so properly, or always telling you that you could have done this in a better way, you could have explained this in a better manner. There's still a long way for you to go. You'll still take some time to come to the point where you are able to handle things maturely. So they're going to throw some words at you. These words can be, you're immature, you're stupid, you're idiot, you're emotionally unevolved, you're a kid, you are shallow, you are um, you still have a lot to explore. You don't have enough exposure, you don't have enough brains, and things like that. So whenever they throw these things at you to make you feel smaller, know that this is a classic way of manipulating you, because the moment you start feeling smaller in the relationship, they have an upper hand, and then they get to control you. They get to control how they feel in this relationship, which is only superior, always in power, always superior, and always admired. And they get a lot of kick out of this. So all of these behaviors combined, any behavior which is allowing a person to very skillfully influence other person to make them act in a way that suits them better, falls under the category of manipulation.
is it really that, every time someone's manipulating someone, how do you identify? Because again, like, so when you're in a relationship, you obviously expect that your partner, some decision are going to be based by you. That common influence expectation is very common, right? So how do you draw that line between having that normal expectation to influence each other, to consult each other, to, in a way, not, I don't know if control is the right word, but, just be that something that they say is going to affect your decision about anything. So how do you draw that line, and where does that, because that's again, I think, a very important line that people need to understand how that gets divided. So what do you have to say about this?
Right. You're right that there is actually a very thin line in two people consulting each other and just one person influencing in the relationship. And when you're in a relationship, it's very hard to identify that when is this, just us talking to each other and trying to understand, and when is it that it starts becoming manipulative in nature. So a simple marker is check with your emotions. How are you feeling? You know, look for these signs in the relationship. So check with your emotions with what? Do you always feel guilty, sorry, obliged in this relationship? Do you feel that it's always you who's doing something wrong? Do you feel that you yet again you've ruined something? That you're going to your partner with your complaint with something that you don't like, but actually it's you who's end up saying sorry, you know so if you're feeling, if you're constantly feeling obliged, constantly feeling guilty, constantly feeling apologetic, or constantly feeling this fear, that there are certain things that you don't want to do but you're doing them out of fear, out of guilt, out of intimidation, or out of this insecurity of being proven wrong again. It's really about who is pitching in how much. So if it's always your partner who's taking the front seat, always making decisions, and then making you feel as if both of you have made this decision together. This is something that happens a lot in manipulative relationships, that they're always going to speak for the two of them. That, you remember how last night we decided that we don't want to do this? And it comes to your mind that no, I never decided this. But because they say that we've decided it, you just sort of go along with it. So these are some of the signs that you need to pick up, right? These are some of the things that you need to look at. That if this is happening, then it means that, the influence is not divided and it's not coming from both the people in the relationship equally. It's really one person doing it, but showing and pretending that it's really both of us. Another thing, one more sign that you can look for in a relationship is how we say the foot in the door technique. You know, that your partner is going to take permission for, let's say, starting to get physically intimate. So you've booked a private space and you go there and they've seeked your permission to meet at a private space and you're okay with that, right? So you feel that, yeah, my partner asked me and I said yes, and you know, it's equal. But then they're going to take advantage of that permission that you gave them. And now that you are in a private space, they can also add certain elements of doing certain things that you have not given permission for. So that is manipulative. Step in the door, that once the person has given you permission for something, आप अपना पैर अड़ा के उसमें बैठ जाते हो, and then you don't let them close the door even after they want to close it. And then you find yourself in a position where you feel, but I went there myself, but I said yes. And it becomes very difficult to understand when is it that my permission was turned into manipulation, and when is it that it became abuse. you know and then there is a reverse of it, door in the face technique, where they're going to first ask for something big, and when you're going to say no for it, they'll pretend that they respect your choice, and then they're going to ask for something a lot less than that. So for example, let's have sex together, you know and if you're like, what, I don't want to have sex, fine, then you'll have to at least go down on me. Then you'll have to at least give me something. And then you automatically feel obliged. You feel like, yeah, I have to give something. Because that's the thing, that when you first say no to something bigger, then when something smaller is put in front of it, you feel like, come on, now this I have to do. So it might look like, but I am the one who's given permission. And this is not just in the case of sex. This is really in any case, in the relationship. When you feel that I've given the permission, but you've not really, so this is, it might look like there is an equal position that both of you are sharing in the relationship, and equal division of power, but it's not really the case. It's only being portrayed as that. So this you'll have to sort on your own. You'll have to be very cautious. What happens is that we tone down that gut voice that comes from within, and that says that, but I don't feel very good after this sexual experience. But then this other voice, which is basically theirs, says that, but you came here on your own, but you seem to like it, but you didn't say no, but you were not um, very assertive while saying no, and I thought you were liking it. I thought you're just shy. So I was just taking care of it by taking the first step and things like that. So their voice is going to be internalized. So you have to be conscious as to what your gut is saying, and turn the volume on so that you can hear it. And it's your gut that's going to guide you home. It's your gut that's going to tell you what's really happening. Is there only pretense that we both have equal right in this relationship? Or is this actually happening?
Now again, like we'll get to the other side, the person who's being manipulated in a bit, but just staying with this manipulator side for now. So I also want to understand, do you think it's always conscious that people manipulate the other one, or is it sometimes subconscious, unconscious perhaps?
No, it's definitely unconscious. In fact, I think it's more so unconscious because so here's how you segregate it. But before I tell you that, I want to say that conscious or unconscious, manipulative behavior definitely does the damage in a way that the person who's being manipulated is going to live with that sort of a trauma for a very long time. You know, so now talking about whether or not people know it. No, people don't always know it. In fact, in very rare cases is when people know it. And this is the difference between toxic and abusive relationship also, right? So when both the partners are just the victims of their life patterns, what they've learned, they're just sort of living by it on an autopilot mode, they're just accustomed to behave a certain way, is when it's an unconscious way. Manipulation is how they've learned to communicate. Like I said, that a manipulator doesn't know how to put forth their demands openly and directly. So how they learn to do that is by being very indirect, by being passive aggressive, by doing all these manipulative things to put across what is it that they expect from their partner. Whereas people who are, and this is called a toxic relationship when this continues to happen chronically. Isha, all the behaviors that we discussed, if we look at them, we'll know that all of us at some point have indulged in some manipulative behavior or the other. We have lied, we have withheld information in order to make things work in our life, or because we didn't want to blow a problem out of proportion, or whatever our reasons were. But it is when this manipulation behavior is chronic and it becomes a part of, how you have begun to communicate with people around you, is when it starts to turn into extremely toxic. Now, talking about abusive is where the partner is the abuser. When we call them the abuser, the perpetrator, we say that what they're manifesting is an offender behavior, you know, that they're coming from the place of harming the other person, and they're doing very calculative steps to do it. They're literally planning that today I won't hit my wife because this is a weekday and she's going to go to work and people will see the marks. So there are researches where it actually says that abusers have had these kind of discussions. They've discussed this, that, oh, this is how I'm going to go about it. So this is offender behavior, which is perhaps coming from witnessing it as a child, in your family and modeling the same behavior, or growing up in an environment where your parents allowed you to get away with anything, so you grew up with a lot of entitlement. So a very thin line difference is that for people who are manipulating on an unconscious level are going to operate more from the place of fearing losing control. And people who do it more consciously are gaining control over the other person. very thin line, so when you fear losing control, or you fear losing a person, or there's some sort of an insecurity, you start to act in desperate ways to stop this person, or the better word is to you start to act in anxious ways to keep this person in your life. You'll see that underneath this, there is always a fear and insecurity of being abandoned, of being rejected, of losing a person, losing a partner, and thereby losing your sense of self, is when you try to, by all means, you try to keep this person in your life, or when you don't want to lose face, so when you're doing it more unconsciously, you're not even sure if you're doing this happens because you're coming from the place of insecurity. But when you're conscious, you're not coming from the place of insecurity as much as you're coming from the place of power. Now, again, deep down, there is also deep-seated insecurity only. That's only when you look for power. But they're coming more from the place of how can I gain power? How can I always be in this powerful position in my relationship where I get to control and I get to uh, have charge in the relationship. So you directly attack and harm your partner. Here it's more about saving yourself, guarding yourself, protecting yourself from getting harmed. So very thin line difference, but definitely unconscious a lot of times.
Okay, so now moving on, one of the very common statements that I've heard from people who've been on the other side, now talking about the ones who have been manipulated, is, "Oh, I'm so stupid, I kept getting manipulated." So, or it's always me. Why is it always me? And how did I let it happen for so long? So, what I'm trying to ask you here is that, do you think that a particular kind of personality, or someone who's had a particular life experience or a life pattern, is going to be more likely to fall themselves trapped in this kind of a situation?
Yes, unfortunately so. Um, it's very simple that the kind of behavior that you're familiar with is the behavior that you'll keep putting up with. If you're not familiar with that behavior, you will understand the intensity of it and you will be able to see how it's harming you. For example, if we talk about the countries or the cities that are like war zones, they've seen a lot of violence, and it's very normal for people over there to hear these bomb blasts, to see weapons, to see people dying, and to see curfews and terrorists overtaking and all of that. For them, violence is they're going to have a very different narrative to violence. They're not even going to look at it as something very unhealthy or alien, uh, until unless they really get in touch with the whole dynamic and the repercussions of it and all of that. They're definitely not going to be alarmed at looking at it, right? Because they're going to adapt to it a lot more easily than someone who's not seen violence at all. So that is the thing, that our mind always operates, our brain always operates on conservation of energy. If it has seen something, already has experienced something, it's easy for the brain to adapt to it because there is already a neural connection between, let's say, love and violence. I've seen violence at home, so, and it has come from a person who's loved me. So when a person who loves me is violent towards me, there's a certain kind of a neurological connection, neurological reaction and physiological reaction that happens. Now this might not necessarily be very pleasant, but it's very intense. It's so intense and it's happened so many times, so frequently, that I've kind of gotten addicted to it. So addiction here is not based on the feel good factor, but it is based on the familiarity factor. So if I've already been exposed to it, it's going to be very normal for me. I'm going to trivialize my experiences in that area and I'm going to adapt to it very quickly. And somehow it's just going to hit home. So whenever I work with my clients who are at the receiving end of such abuse, emotional, psychological, spiritual, they always feel a weird kind of connect with their abuser or perpetrator. They always say that I've been treated miserably in that relationship, but there's I experience this very odd comfort with this person. And when we then explore and go back to what their childhood was like, or what kind of relationship did they share with their uh, primary caregivers, we find out that there was a similar pattern. Parents engage in manipulation a lot with their children. when they're bringing up their children. Spiritual abuse happens the most in that relationship, where parent always acts god-like, always does moral policing, making the child feel that you're, some kind of a sinner, or you're some kind of a, you're always making mistakes, and always pretending or showing themselves to be unaffected, that as if we are above it all. We don't feel anything. We don't. But children will never see their parents cry. They will never see them having any kind of emotional reaction. So no modeling of healthy emotion whatsoever. All of this is what, parents putting themselves in a very godlike position, that I'm like, cannot be touched, cannot come under your, you know like, I'm just way beyond you, constantly making the child feel a lot smaller, or parents being over disciplinaries, or just very condescending and patronizing, always have that sort of a tone going on. So that is going to be very familiar for the child. Or parents always coming from the place of telling the child how uh, whatever they're choosing is not good enough. Like, look at the society, look at this other person who's doing this. So you constantly feel that in comparison to the other person, I'm still a lot less, or you keep comparing yourself with a particular parent only, and you put them on a pedestal, and you feel like I have to match up to their level. So you're going to find partners also who you're going to either put up on pedestal, if that's what you had going on with your caregivers, or you will choose partners who are condescending because that's what you had going on. And even though all of these experiences were very unpleasant, and you wanted to just get away with your from your parents after a point, know that it's very familiar. Your mind and body is very attuned to this kind of experience. So whenever another person makes you feel this way in your life, it's just going to hit home. It's going to create those similar physiological reactions. And when we say that, oh, we just clicked, it just happened, it was so quick, and I know it's too quick, but it just feels so right. So that feeling right is not your gut, it's a sense of familiarity. And the moment you start hitting that point, the moment you start having that sense of familiarity, you start overlooking all the red flags. You start overlooking how I'm losing my sense of self in this relationship, how it's become all about this person, and that's when uh, this is why some people are more likely to be at the receiving end of manipulation in their life than those who've never seen it in their family, who've grown up with a very secure attachment pattern, who were respected by their parents, who were modeled very healthy, expressing of emotions by their parents, who were given full regard, and they were trusted, and they were given unconditional love. These people are going to be very surprised when they'll see manipulation coming their way, and they'll be like, excuse me, what do you think you're doing? You think you can do this with me and you can get away with it? No. And sometimes, now a lot of our viewers must be thinking, I've been manipulated, but my parents have been really nice to me, and I don't relate to that. But that's the thing, sometimes it's very disguised. It's not always outwardly parents going like, tumse kuch nahi hoga, you're not good for anything, this and that. It can be very disguised. So for example, a parent obviously telling you, always patting your back, always supporting you, and telling you that you're doing great, we're very happy with you, etc. But the very next moment they're going to say that, but you know that you need to do more, right? But you know that this is not enough, right? Don't you think that you're celebrating too much? You still have a long way to go, or putting the child on the pedestal and expecting nothing less than perfection from them. So then you start to feel that you have to be perfect in order to be loved. And being perfect means to give in, to not raise voice, to not disagree, to not hurt the other person, you know and then you come into a relationship and you think like, I can't tell this person this, they'll be terribly hurt, or I'm just going to break their heart, so I can't do this. So in some way or the other, it can be disguised, but it does definitely come from what you've experienced in the early years of your life with your caregivers.
Right. And when you're slowly moving towards that conversation about healing from this and putting it in your words, you cannot heal what you cannot feel. So it's also important to acknowledge the sort of damage that's being done by being a part of this relationship. So could you maybe elaborate a little about what is it that someone who's been in this kind of situation is going to feel like, or what all Like, what is it that's going to be affected in them from this?
Right. So, first of all, knowing that, when you come out of emotional abuse, psychological abuse, it's so real. The abuse is so real that it actually leaves you with trauma. You're actually left with trauma, and somehow trauma coming from the place of a very severe near death experience, or very severe abuses such as rape or sexual abuse are acknowledged in our culture, but the trauma coming from emotional abuse is not acknowledged in our culture. And this is not by people outside, this is by the victim themselves. The victim keeps trivializing how they felt, because this is one of the things that your abuser does the first time. That I mean the first thing that they do to create that foundation of manipulation is that they keep dismissing and invalidating your feelings. Of course, like we discussed, not always consciously, but in order to protect themselves, they need to dismiss how you're feeling, because if you're right and they're also right, then they don't get to win. So one person has to be wrong in order to for the other person to win. So one, to recognize that there is massive trauma when you've come out of this relationship, and now how does that trauma impact your mental health or your sense of self? Well, first of all, like we discussed, that you will have such difficulty acknowledging your own emotions that you're going to constantly keep questioning them. That, am I making a mountain out of a molehill? Am I dragging it too much? Am I just being too unreasonable? Everyone is going through things like these. Is it just me who's like blowing things out of proportion? Because these are the kind of things that are fed to you, you know. And then whatever you are told in the relationship with a manipulator, it's just going to become your inner voice. So much so that you're going to start evaluating yourself in the same way that this partner was evaluating you. So, for example, if your partner said that, if you told your partner that, I'm not able to study or work because of our um, constant to and fro communication, so maybe I want to take a break, or I want to cut down on our conversations a little bit. And if your partner is insecure and they start manipulating you and they go like, uh yeah, no, I'll help you work, or I'll help you study, and they help you make a timetable, and they help you, like they're like, we'll check on your timetable together, and I'll not bother you, and all of that. It'll come across as very sweet in the beginning, but sharing the experience of some of the clients who've shared this experience, that the partners then actually end up helping them in a way that they're going to come up with a very tight schedule for them, which is humanly not possible to meet. So when they won't be able to meet this schedule, the partner, the manipulator partner, is going to prove that it's you who's not serious. It's you who's not dedicated enough. You are the one who doesn't want to work. So don't put it on me. And you'll believe it. So even when you come out of this relationship, you're going to carry on with that belief that I'm not serious enough. I'm not dedicated enough. I don't want things to work out for me. Or every time that you'll cry, you will use their words that I'm being too sensitive. I think I'm too dramatic. And this happens so many times when clients come into therapy after coming out of such a relationship. They talk about themselves in such derogatory manner. And when asked, where is this coming from? Who has used this word for you? Stupid, immature, too naive, you know, dramatic, too emotional, too sensitive. They find out that it's the words of their abuser, their perpetrator, their partner who was manipulating them, that they've adopted. And this has become their inner voice now. They've internalized all of their words, and they've started to look at themselves in the same light. So, this is one of the biggest impacts of being in a relationship that was manipulative, that you're constantly looking at yourself in the same light, even if you've gotten away from that partner. And then of course there are some very then obvious impacts of it. Your decision making takes a big hit, because you're not able to have faith in yourself. You have such difficulty making decisions in life. You'll make a decision and you'll go back to questioning it. you know you will doubt your capabilities so much that you will always fear failure. That will lead to procrastination, that you won't get started on things only. Or you will find yourself trying to be a perfectionist in every area of your life, because you feel that in order to now find love or be good or be happy, you have to be perfect. Because that's what your partner kept doing. They kept picking up on your shortcomings. So you feel that now you have to be perfect. So these are some of the very lasting, damaging impacts that you're left with, even if you manage to come out of this relationship and go really, really away from this person. And then not to forget that you're always going to be very easily triggered. Every time that you're going to come across a person who talks to you this way, you're going to be so easily triggered and you'll feel so easily intimidated and overwhelmed that one experience of manipulation opens you up for more such experiences in your life. And you're definitely more prone to getting stuck into the same cycle again. Of course, given that you then break it, or until unless you break it, and then of course you can break out of this cycle. So healing being the key word here, that the idea is not just to get away from this partner who's been manipulating you, but also get away from all the impact that they've left on you, all their words or their voice, getting rid of their voice that has now become your inner voice. So these are many ways in which your self-esteem gets a major hit after coming out of a toxic manipulative relationship.
And once you've acknowledged it, once you've understood, okay, this is the situation I'm in, you have two options again. A, to communicate. I mean, you definitely call it out, yes. But again, to see if there is any scope for growth, for getting back together, for the partner to improve, or it's a hopeless situation. So, A, how do you gauge that? Is the only way gauging is that you talk to them and you figure it out? And B, I want to understand from you, is it even possible, is it even possible for couples to come back together and unlearn this behavior and unlearn the, I mean, more than that, undo the damage together? Or is there that, how we discussed in the last episode, that keeping scores wala thing is going to stay throughout? So is that possible to just erase all of that and start with a fresh canvas?
Right. That's a very good question. Um, Oftentimes we think that, again, we start keeping scores when we finally realize. A lot of my clients, when they finally, because they saw some signs, they were not sure if this was manipulation. They got into therapy to fix the relationship. They realized they were being manipulated big time. Now, if they're very quick to, again, go against their partner and think that, oh, they've done so much for me, and like we discussed, that we start feeling that how could I allow myself to go through this and things like that. So there's a lot of anger, a lot of frustration, a lot of feeling, doubting yourself, that comes up. So I tell you, for most part, we're angry at ourselves that we allowed ourselves to go through this, but we project that anger onto the partner and we go like, how can you do this to me? Acknowledge that, yeah, I saw it, I felt it, but I chose to overlook it because I really wanted to stay. So yes, you can recover from it as a couple, and you can recover from it as an individual. And uh, because you've realized that this was manipulative, it doesn't necessarily have to be the end of it, given that both of you are ready to work through this together. Know that one person, or if you've realized it, you alone can't do it. Now, there are certain communication tools that we need to navigate through this situation. So let's say that you were at the receiving end of manipulation and you realized that this was happening, and your partner is still absolutely unaware that this is what they're doing to you. So if you are seeking professional help, first of all, or not, however you're choosing to cope with it, the first step always have to be that you will have to give time to your emotions. You've just recently realized that you were being abused in a way, from someone that you love so much, that you've put so much trust in. So there's definitely going to be a loss of trust. There's going to be shock. There's going to be denial also. There's going to be anger. There's going to be feeling immense guilt, feeling uh, a loss of sense of self, so many things like these. And if you will try to navigate through this with your partner while you are feeling all of these emotions, it's not going to work out. So know that first you have to allow yourself to feel it, to go through it, to come to terms with what has been happening. And you would want to attack your partner, you would want to tell them that this is what you've been doing to me and all of that. Now, I suggest that this is a very vulnerable position, a very overwhelming place to be in. So if you do this in therapy, it's definitely more advisable, you know. that while you're in therapy, you're processing it with your therapist. You're finding a safe space to deal with your emotions, because it's really a lot to deal with. Once you feel that you've come to a place where you now understand what was happening, where you're coming from, where your partner's coming from, and they were doing it unconsciously, they were not choosing to harm you, you know only then there is a possibility of working it out, right? So on an individual level, you have to recognize why is it that you have been signing up for manipulation, so that you don't keep shaming yourself for doing it. Know your patterns, know that you're nothing but a victim of your patterns. We don't have as much freedom of choice as we think we do. you know of course, once we break out of our patterns, then we're confronted with many more choices in our life. And which is now you've understood your pattern. So what do you want to do now? You want to reconcile, you understand that your partner also doesn't understand this. Then you're going to have a discussion with them, not attack, not blaming, not an argument, but a discussion where your emotions are, if active, it's not going to go down very well. So your emotions do not have to be active at the time. You should come from a place where you've dealt with your side of the trauma, and then you can sit your partner down. And now, not having active emotions doesn't mean that you don't have to express to them how you felt. Of course you have to express to them, but there's a difference between expressing and attacking. This is what you've done to me, you've ruined my life. Attack. This is what I've been feeling. This is what your actions have made me feel about myself, made me feel about how, like, you look at me and you evaluate me, and how important am I to you, all of these things. Then when you communicate with your partner, you talk to them in a way that makes them feel that you're ready to actually work through this. You're not in a mood of keeping scores anymore. So while you're telling your partner whatever you've done has affected me and has harmed me, you also tell them how you also take responsibility for your side of the problem. When you see that your partner is receiving it well, and you're being heard, you're being seen, and they are understanding and they're not defensive enough, you know that you can work this out because you're being given due consideration. So when you're not attacking, they're also willing to put their guard down. But if you feel that they're constantly in that space where they're still attacking you and they're feeling too defensive, then know that you're not their therapist, and you can't bring them out of that insecure self that they are completely stuck in. You can't help them with that. And of course, it's good to look at the person and say that, deep down he's a good person, or deep down she's a great girl, but they have their own set of insecurities, etc. Yes, but if you be with them, then you're going to have to be with them with their set of insecurities, and you have to ask yourself if you're willing to do that. Because if you're telling yourself that I'm just going to wait for it to get better and I'm going to stick around, that's great if you want to give your partner that platform, but know that do that only when it's actually getting better, when there is actually some actions being done by your partners, from your partner's end, where you can see that they are also wanting to work through this, when you see efforts from their side as well. How to see efforts? That they're not only saying things, you're seeing it in their actions as well, and these actions are more consistent than big actions really quickly, going really up, really quickly, and then coming down, and then that's that. So all of this is not progress. All of this is not them trying to put in effort, them making big promises, giving you big words, or quickly doing lots of things. Quickly doing lots of things is not healing, it's compensation. Compensation does not make relationships better. Compensation is coming from the place of guilt, not from the place of taking responsibility. When you're too guilty, you quickly want to do some big, big things, and then you go back to your original nature. But when you take responsibility, you try to understand, why did I do this to my partner? Why did I hurt him or her so much? How can I break that? I really want to be able to work this out. So let's have very authentic, healthy conversations. And this is how a couple heals together. You have authentic and honest conversations. Both of you take responsibility for your part of toxicity that you brought to the relationship. And you decide that from here on, we will not attack each other with each other's vulnerabilities. and talk to each other about your vulnerabilities. Tell each other that now I'm going to tell you something which is very sensitive for me, and I want to be able to trust you to put this kind of an information out. And I hope that you'll respect it and you will not use it against me at a sensitive point. Having these kind of hard conversations, and knowing and seeing that this is being received well, they are also reciprocating. Both of you are in this together. As long as that is happening, you know that you have a potential to heal. But if there's only one person who's trying to fix it, but the other one is still using the vulnerability against them or just pretending to be on board, then you know that you're just trying to push a wall.
And what about individual recovery and individual healing? How does that happen? I mean, of course, it's very subjective to each their own, but if there's anything that you'd like to give them as a start.
You see, when you're in a manipulative relationship or in a relationship where you've been gaslighted, like I said, that it becomes very difficult for you to trust your own emotions. So when you can't trust your own emotions, your own gut, your own thoughts, your own truth, your own memory, how are you going to come to terms with the fact that you have in fact been manipulated? So there is always a requirement of a third party for you to be able to trust your own experiences of manipulation. You're going to have a hunch that something wasn't right there, but how to then build on it? Because whenever clients walk into therapy, there's a lot of to and fro that happens. There are days where they are very much in touch with what has been happening to them. And then there are days where they completely shrink their consciousness in that area because the fear takes over. The fear that, oh, but then you're going to be alone, then you're not going to have a partner. So just settle with whatever it is that you have. Then those days they're very defensive. So there's a requirement of a third party. Third party can be a person, obviously ideally a therapist, or these can actually be certain articles written on manipulation, gaslighting, etc. So that you can read those telltale signs, you can read those behaviors that fall under the category of manipulation and gaslight, so that you can validate your experience. You need basically to validate your experience. When you're manipulated, this is one thing that you are unable to do absolutely, because you've been treated by someone you loved so dearly in a way that they completely made you feel that if you're feeling something, it's absolutely questionable. So you can't really rely on your feelings. So that makes it very difficult for you to come to a terms with the fact that you were in fact a victim of some kind of an abuse. And of course, we know that no healing can happen without acknowledging that. So if you're someone who has a hunch that that is happening, watch the beginning of this video where we talked about the science, or go read some articles, or discuss it with someone who is capable of some sanity. Like, I mean, they are capable of understanding things from an emotionally intelligent point of view. And of course, ideally get into therapy and figure it out for yourself. That of course is the best option. So you need to validate your emotions. You need to be completely in touch with the fact that what all fell under manipulation, because you're going to also come out of the relationship feeling पर मैं भी तो गलत थी ना, बट मैंने भी तो कुछ गलत किया है ना, सब कुछ मेरी गर्लफ्रेंड ने नहीं किया, मैं भी गलत था. तो ये जो इल्यूजन है ना, इसकी वजह से आप उनका बहुत सारा बिहेवियर जस्टिफाई करते रहोगे. तो पहले तो इसके बारे में टच में आना है, दैट यू बीन मैनिपुलेटेड, एंड इसकी ग्रेविटी कितनी थी उसके भी टच में आना है. तो फॉर दैट यू नीड टू सिट डाउन with your experiences and maybe talk it out to someone, or like I said, read up about it, or go to a therapist. And you're going to want to rant a lot. You're going to want to get in touch with all of your experiences. So you need a safe space is what I'm saying essentially. Now that safe space can be a therapy room, it can be a good friend, it can be your journal. That's step one. Secondly, once you feel that you've come to terms with it completely, then you have to start feeding into your gut. Because so far you've only been feeding into your partner's words. You've been giving a lot of power to them. So now you have to start feeding into your gut. So every time. So how can that happen? You can start recognizing what are the words that you tell yourself, how your inner critic talks to you, and how a part of that voice is your partner's voice. So recognize, oh my God, these are the words that my partners used to use, and now I'm using the same words for myself. and literally like make a note of those words. Make a note of how I talk to myself, just the way my partner has been talking to me. Once you take notice of that, then start doing very active work of pointing it out every time that you talk to yourself like that, and show yourself the fact in the moment. For example, your partner always told you, like we discussed, that your partner said that you're the one who's not serious about work. You only don't want to work. So don't put the blame on me that I am not allowing you to work, or I am a distraction for you. So now every time that you're going to sit down and you're going to do something, and this self doubt is going to come up that, I'm not too serious. See, look, I'm not able to deliver things on time. No, this is a proof that I am not serious. Now, if you've made that list where you've written down that, this is how my manipulative partner has spoken to me, you'll identify in that very moment, this is my partner's internalized voice. Then tell yourself the fact, is that really true? Am I really not dedicated towards work? Do I really not want to work? And then collect facts, real facts, evidences. So this is the kind of a self work that you're going to have to engage in order to heal. Know that it first begins with emotions, doing the emotional work, and then the breaking of the narrative that you've adopted.
Right, and with that, we come to a close for today's episode. Thank you so much, Praneeth. And to everyone listening, just like Praneeth rightly said, that sometimes you are not able to trust your own gut, you're not able to trust your emotions. And we really hope that this video, in whatever capacity, has been able to help you come in touch with your emotions. And if it did, please let us know. And we'll be back with another episode next week. Till then, keep pouring your heart out.